Welcome. Thank you for joining us on Classic Vinyl Podcast. This is the podcast where we listen to and review songs and albums from the classic vinyl era of the 60s and 70s. You're once again joining us for one of our episodes, our Meet The Beatles series, and we're going to do Yes It Is. And I am Justin, one of your hosts, and I'm once again joined by my other host, Tyler.
Thank you again for letting me come to the podcast.
Please don't wear red tonight.
I won't. Yes, it is.
I guess I kind of did.
That's okay.
Well, it's maroon. It's close to red.
It's not scarlet. Crimson.
Scarlet wore the clothes she wore.
She messed him up.
She did. So this is our Meet the Beatles series, and we're on to their single, Yes It Is. I don't know what episode number this is, but we're doing them in chronological order of how they were released in the UK, the best we can do them anyways. We don't give the whole history on the Beatles up front because we assume you've listened to one of our episodes or you know something about the Beatles anyways.
Ladies and gentlemen, a band that needs no introduction.
John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, the four lads from Liverpool, which are my favorite band and probably a lot of people's favorite bands. And of course, a lot of people dislike them too, just because of their popularity and whatnot. But I am trying to get Tyler a little more into the Beatles, and I think it's starting to work.
Well, you know, I lumped myself in with those people that didn't like the Beatles just because they were super popular.
And I do that as well with certain bands.
This is kind of conversion therapy.
It is conversion therapy. And the funny thing about it is I think probably the hardest stuff to convert is this early stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've said it before on this podcast, but I found my way into the Beatles middle stuff, you know, more like probably middle to late, really, you know, Rubber Soul to Revolver to Sgt. Pepper's to the White Album, that kind of stuff. And I worked my way backwards. But why don't we get into Yes It Is a little bit? But before we do, Tyler, we listened to this song twice all the way through the original, and then we listened to the alternate version that's on Anthology 2. I think I know the answer to this, but what is your history with this song?
This is my third time listening to this song, and all of it was tonight. Yeah. So, yeah, this is one where I'm getting to meet the Beatles.
Yes, you're meeting them, and we just barely got done listening to them. So
that's right.
Let me get into a little history on the Beatles. Yes, it is. Now, this was released as the B-side of the Ticket to Ride single. It was released on April 9th of 1965 in the UK, and 10 days later, April 19th, 1965 in the US. It was the same single both in the UK and US, with Ticket to Ride as the A-side and Yes It Is as the B-side. Now, this is a song written mainly by John Lennon, but like all their songs, is credited to both Lennon and McCartney. McCartney has said, like many songs at the time, Lennon brought it in and McCartney helped him finish it up. So it was recorded at EMI Studios, also now known as Abbey Road Studios in London, England, and produced by George Martin. Now, one funny thing about this song is it took 14 takes to record this song, and that was actually a record for the band up to this point. They had never had a song up to this point that took more than 14 takes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
So, along with the Beatles, you have George Martin playing on this song. He plays the Hammond organ on this, which is probably the lead instrument really on this.
It certainly opens it.
Yeah. And it's also one of the first songs George Harrison played his guitar using the volume pedal. You can kind of hear that guitar get louder and quieter, and he's using that volume pedal. And they recorded it the same day as his song, I Need You. He was using his distinctive volume pedal on that song as well. So this was released only as a single in the UK. It was not on an album, but in the US, Yes It Is was included on the US album Beatles 6. It is also included on the album's Love Songs, Past Masters 1, and there's an alternate version on Anthology 2, like I was stating earlier, that we listened to as well, which is kind of more of a guide track because the vocal's not really filled in. At the end, you get some of the harmonies and things, but it's pretty decent song that way too. Yes, It Is. The B-side reached number 46 on the charts is all, but the A-side, Ticket to Ride, reached number 1 worldwide. I mean, it was number 1 everywhere.
Oh, yeah, everybody knows that song.
Yeah, very popular song, and we'll be getting to the album that Ticket to Ride's off of, Help, here shortly. So some of the early U.S. pressings of this single actually showed this song was from the movie 8 Arms to Hold You, which was the original name for the movie Help, but what was funny about that is this song was not on that movie. So nobody really knows why the pressings were made that way, but they were. And I think that's mainly on the earliest pressings, and they did fix that. So if you have one of those, it'd be interesting to see what yours shows. John Lennon stated on multiple occasions, but especially in a 1980 interview, that this was his attempt to rewrite their other song called This Boy, which is kind of the same type of song because he really wasn't happy with that song. It does share some of the similarities with This Boy. The harmonies are really similar, obviously, and it's got that strange 12/8 time signature to it. It's a ballad for sure.
Yeah, these are very similar sounding songs, and they're in that same groove.
Yeah, they really are. They're almost kind of Motown feeling in a way too. It's kind of I wouldn't say a waltz, but it's a slow, like slow waltz, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the lyrics are concerned, I would say they're pretty straightforward. They somewhat imply the death or the leaving of a former love of his, and his desire to move on with his life.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. If it's the death, then that makes sense. Otherwise, he just got wrecked, and what's he doing back in the dating scene is what I want to know.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking, but maybe it's referring to death as her leaving him and the death of their love. I don't really know, but the lyrics also describe the sense of uncertainty and doubt that surrounds all the matters of love and relationships and the difficulty of moving on after losing someone, whether it is to death or breaking up or whatever. I mean, I think you get into a lot of these early Beatles songs and they're not real deep on the lyrics, but the funny thing is they're a lot deeper than some of the other bands at the time.
And he's really trying to be.
Yeah, he is trying to be. And him trying to rewrite This Boy, I know he stated that, and I don't know if he's stating that 15 years in the future and that's his recollection of it, but it is very similar in the harmonies and things, and I really like This Boy, and I like Yes It Is as well. Were you surprised this was the Beatles? I mean, you obviously knew what we were listening to, but where does this song fall with you in the pantheon of Beatles music, of what you've really experienced so far?
It definitely sounds like the Beatles, and it definitely sounds like This Boy. I've never heard this one before, though. And yet, when we get to the rating, once again, the conversion therapy is working, Justin, because I have yet to rate a Beatles song south of 5. It's really good, but it sounds like later Beatles in the writing of it, but the performance of it and the sound to it sounds like early Beatles.
Well, I think that's really what's special about the Beatles is they can write a rocky little number that sounds similar to Little Richard or something, and they can kind of go all over the place, and I think that's what kind of made them special, in my opinion, because this is not a rocky number by any means. I mean, you've got a slight drum in the song, and we'll get to all that, but you listen to it twice and then listen to the alternate version, which is very similar. What are your thoughts after listening to this for the first time today?
I really love that keyboard. George Martin on it. It opens, and that is kind of the fifth Beatle here singing along. That keyboard sings, and it's a beautiful sound.
You mentioned the fifth Beatle, and I know there's always been a lot of conversation around that. My thought is there's more than one fifth Beatle.
Yeah, it's whoever happens to be the fifth Beatle at the time, right?
I think George Martin was most certainly the fifth Beatle for the first half of their career.
And I think the keyboard was the fifth Beatle for this song.
Well, no doubt about it, and that's George Martin. But I think as you get into the later Beatles, I think without a doubt, on the last couple albums, Billy Preston is the fifth Beatle, and we'll get to that at a certain point in time. But at this point in the group's history, George Martin, without a doubt, is the fifth Beatle.
And he certainly makes that keyboard just sing. It's pretty. And listening to this song, it sounds like a real sweet little love song, but there is something kind of downer to it. And then he starts to, the lyrics come in and we get to singing. And he's like, just don't wear red tonight. And his whole reasoning behind please don't wear red is because that's the color that his baby wore. Well, he's going on a date, but he's got a baby. So it makes sense when you say that she's dead. Because if she died tragically, then that's a wound that doesn't heal well. And so I can understand having an entire color ruined for him. But going into the dating scene, man, that's rough. It makes me wonder, is this guy ready to go into the dating scene again?
Do you think she actually died, though? Because as a young man, and when it comes to love and things like that, you tend to blow things out of proportion, too. I mean, that was just my thought on it, but I also thought, maybe that's not exactly what happened.
Yeah, and if it's not, then you're right. He might just be that immature in his first love, his first crush, everything reminds him of her. And so he's trying to move on, but boy, he's really struggling because if she wears red, it's going to ruin his night, because that's how hard he's been rocked by this past love. She ruined him. She did a number on him, or she died, whichever. Both of them are real heartbreaking, but it also opens up a question to me that who is the audience? Who's this song written for? Is it just a lovesick, heartbroken lad? Because, I mean, it plays out like a slow song, like a slow waltz. But it makes me wonder, like, okay, well, who are you going to play this song for? Because it's not a love song.
Well, I think looking at the single Ticket to Ride was actually one of the heavier songs at the time, being the A side. And a lot of people say that's where power chords were invented. And it's a pretty heavy beat song. And some people say it was the first heavy metal song of all time. I think that's stretching it a little too far, but it is a heavy song. And I think this song, although maybe it was made to try and remake This Boy, I kind of think it was kind of the antithesis of the A side.
To juxtapose it, right?
It really did. It's just like what they did on the Ed Sullivan Show. They could show, I think it had a way of showing their range, but they're playing to multiple audiences with it instead of just being a rockin' little band or a band that can play ballads. They can do everything. And I don't think there were a whole lot of groups at the time that could do that.
This song does strike me as being just the sound of it, the way that it played extremely well. And it makes me wonder, is this their way of trying to hook some of the moms and dads? Because this does reminisce a little bit of songs from the 30s and 40s in the way that you have that slow waltz.
I think maybe not forward thinking that was the idea, but I think the Beatles tried really hard to do something different all the time. And we've said it before, and I've said it before multiple times, is as soon as they started doing something that worked, they wanted to change it.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't want to be pigeonholed in something like that.
Even though they sound like the Beatles, find me a couple of Beatles songs that sound exactly alike. It's like, your best friend's voice. You know what they sound like. You recognize that voice, and that's, them. But they're not always in a happy mood. They're not always in an angry mood. They're not always in a sad mood. They're not always in a silly mood. They change moods, and that's kind of the way the Beatles are, is they change up their songs, but you just recognize their voice. And that's something that I really like about the Beatles. I said what I think about this song. What do you think, Justin?
I really like this song. I like the different songs, how they juxtapose each other from the Beatles, and that goes from the singles and the albums and everything. This is a song I tend to hear as much just simply because it didn't fall on an album, and I listen to a lot of the UK albums. So to hear this one, you need to pull out either the anthologies or the past masters, which I still do, but just not as often. So I really like the lyrics. For red is the color that will make me blue. And I'm sure they spelled color with an O-U-R.
Yeah, they're British.
Yeah, they had to. But it's got really good descriptive lyrics in it. It doesn't seem crazy out of the box for anything now.
Yeah, even if it does have an unnecessary extra vowel.
Yeah, but it does have that underlying tone. It's not just a simple love song or a simple lost love song. It's kind of dark in a way. Mm-hmm. But as far as music, the organ opens it up, and I really think he does a good job with that. And you can just kind of hear the rhythm guitar in it, and there's just light drumming. I think the thing that's best about this song is the harmonies. It's a really decent ballad from Lennon. The bridge where he goes into the "I could be happy with you by my side," that's where I love Lennon's vocal on this. It's doubled like he likes to do, but it's kind of piercing when he sings that, because it's kind of a slow song, and that part he gets really loud in, and it does pierce. And that I would like to hear that vocal on its own track, because it's pretty amazing to me. I think the vocals stand out in this song more than anything to me. The music is just soft and quiet. I wouldn't say it's lacking, but it's not a music driven song, obviously. So it's really decent song. You can barely hear any bass in it. There's one strumming guitar that you can hear. It could be a couple over each other or whatever, and the low drums, but it's a decent song, and I like hearing it. So do you want to get to the song rating?
Let's rate it.
Song rating.
Okay, listener, if this is your first episode, I'm going to explain our rating system to you. Our scale is 0 to 10, 10 being the best. I want to give this one higher because it's performed so competently and professionally. The subject material really makes me wonder who the audience is for this, and it's real melancholy. And so I put this one at a 7, but I'll say the performance of it should put it up there a couple more points, and that's how much I like this song. Where do you put this one, Justin?
You know, this isn't my favorite Beatles song by far. It's not my least favorite Beatles song. I enjoy this song, and when I give my ratings on the Beatles, this isn't based on any other music. This is based on a Beatles sliding scale, like I always say. I rate this song the same as you, a 7.
Oh, really?
I think the vocals in this are a 9 or a 9.5 easily.
For sure.
But the song is pretty melancholy, and it's good. I think remaking This Boy, it pretty much is kind of a similar song in a way. I don't think the harmonies are as great in this one as they are in This Boy, but I think the vocal from Lennon, the solo portion of it, is much better. So I rate this a 7 on the Beatles sliding scale.
And once again, we match up.
Yeah. So that's our Meet the Beatles series, and we made it to the song Yes It Is, and we'll be back with another one in several weeks. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please send them to us at classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. Any songs you'd like us to rate, send them to the same place, and we really appreciate you listening. Until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.